From the outside, Emma's marriage seemed like the dream she had prayed for all her life. Daniel was everything people expected in a devoted husband, successful, attentive, and unfailingly polite at family dinners. He remembered her coffee order, always placed his hand at the small of her back, and told friends how lucky he was to have her. Yet beneath Emma's smile lingered a weight she couldn't name. Sometimes in the quiet of their home, she felt a distance in his gaze, as though his eyes rested on her, but his mind drifted elsewhere. She told herself she was imagining things. After all, what woman wouldn't be grateful for such a husband? Their evenings often unfolded with a routine elegance. Daniel would pour her wine, ask about her day, and listen with a practiced intensity that made her feel cherished. Still, when the silence stretched too long, she caught herself wondering why her chest tightened, why she felt as though something unspoken hovered between them. One evening, as autumn rain tapped against the windows, Emma curled on the couch with a blanket. Daniel walked in from his study, phone in hand, his expression shifting the moment he saw her. "Long day?" he asked, voice warm, eyes flicking quickly toward the screen before sliding it into his pocket. "Yes," she murmured, watching him carefully, "but it feels better now." His smile was perfect, perhaps too perfect. Later that night, Emma stirred awake to the faint hum of a voice. She slipped quietly from the bed, padding down the hallway. The glow of the kitchen light spilled across the hardwood floor. Daniel stood with his back to her, phone pressed to his ear, his tone clipped and urgent. "I told you not now." "She doesn't know anything." Emma froze. Her heartbeat thundered, though she tried to steady her breath. He turned slightly, lowering his voice to a whisper as if sensing her presence. For a moment she considered stepping into the room, demanding to know who he was speaking to. Instead, she retreated silently, her fingers trembling as she clutched the banister. In bed, staring at the ceiling, Emma told herself there must be a reasonable explanation. But in her chest, unease had already rooted itself, an unease that would only grow. Emma awoke the next morning trying to shake off the unease from the night before. Daniel was already at the breakfast table, tie perfectly knotted, reading the paper as though nothing in the world could disturb him. He looked up, offered her a soft smile, and for a fleeting moment she convinced herself she had imagined everything. But the cracks soon began to show. That week, Daniel arrived home later than usual, always with an excuse polished to perfection: a client dinner, an unexpected meeting, traffic on the interstate. Each time he delivered the words so smoothly, Emma almost believed them. Almost. She began noticing smaller details, his suit jacket smelling faintly of unfamiliar perfume, his phone face down at dinner, a locked drawer in his study that had never been locked before. When she asked, he would chuckle, kiss her forehead, and wave away her suspicions. "Emma, love," he said one evening, his voice edged with laughter. "You've been watching too many crime shows. You really think I'd hide something from you?" His words made her cheeks flush with shame, though she couldn't shake the heavy knot forming in her stomach. He was turning her questions into absurdities, making her feel foolish for even daring to ask. At night, she lay awake beside him, listening to the rhythm of his breathing. She tried to match it, tried to believe in the safety of his arms draped over her. But in the shadows, her doubts whispered louder. She reached out to her friends less, embarrassed by her own uncertainty. When she confided in her sister over the phone, Daniel overheard and later teased her about it, twisting her concern into paranoia. "You're making a villain out of me," he murmured, his tone wounded. "Do you even trust me at all?" The question lingered long after he left the room. By the end of the week, Emma found herself standing outside his locked study, fingertips grazing the drawer handle, a war raging in her mind. Something inside urged her to open it. Another voice told her she was losing herself. And in that silence, paranoia began to win. Emma's fingers lingered on the locked drawer, but she pulled back when she heard Daniel's footsteps in the hall. She slipped into the bedroom, her heart pounding. She told herself she would let it go for now. What she didn't know was that outside their quiet home, someone else was already circling the shadows of Daniel's past. Detective Mark Harlan had never forgotten the murder of Clara Winters, a young woman whose body was found near the riverbank 7 years ago. The case had gone cold, but fragments of evidence remained etched in his memory. A broken watch clasp, a torn photograph, and the nagging suspicion that the killer had been hiding in plain sight. Recently, new information had surfaced. A witness, long silenced by fear, had finally spoken, describing a man with Daniel's build, Daniel's voice. Harlan began digging quietly, pulling old case files from dusty boxes, his instincts sharpening with each discovery. Meanwhile, Daniel's mask of perfection remained intact at home. He cooked Emma dinner, brushed her hair from her face, and whispered, "You're everything to me." But beneath the calm exterior, his thoughts twisted in darker corridors. She's growing suspicious, he told himself as he rinsed the dishes one night, the faint metallic scent of memory clinging to his mind. But she won't leave me. She can't. I won't let her. When Emma laughed nervously at one of his jokes, Daniel's gaze lingered on her a moment too long. To anyone else, it was affection. To him, it was a test of control. He had perfected this dance years ago, smiles concealing storms, tenderness cloaking violence. Detective Harlan began watching Daniel from afar. He noted the late-night drives, the closed-door phone calls, the careful way Daniel avoided certain neighborhoods. Every detail whispered of guilt. Yet Harlan knew he couldn't approach Emma. Not yet. She seemed blind to the danger she lived beside. One evening, Daniel paused in his study, staring at the locked drawer Emma had nearly opened. His reflection glimmered faintly in the polished wood. If anyone knew, everything would unravel. He closed the door softly, the weight of secrets pressing down on him. And while Emma tried to silence her doubts somewhere across town, Detective Harlan traced a red circle around Daniel's name. The past was no longer buried. Emma's doubts grew heavier with each passing day. She replayed Daniel's strange late-night calls in her mind. The locked drawer, the perfume on his clothes. Her heart screamed at her to confront him, yet fear of being wrong and of losing him kept her silent. One evening, as they cleared the dinner table, the words slipped out. "Daniel, why do you keep locking your study drawer? What are you hiding from me?" His hands froze around a plate before he carefully set it down. His smile was patient, almost pitying. "Emma, you're imagining things again," he sighed, brushing a hand through his hair. "I lock it because of important work files. Do you really think I'd keep secrets from you?" The softness in his tone almost disarmed her, but something in his eyes unsettled her. She pressed again, her voice trembling. "Then why do you take calls in the middle of the night? Why whisper like I'm not supposed to hear?" Daniel's expression shifted, his patience cracking into something sharper. "Do you hear yourself? Always doubting, always suspicious. You're making problems where there aren't any," Emma faltered, guilt twisting in her stomach. Was she imagining things? Was she the one breaking them apart? He stepped closer, tilting her chin until their eyes met. "I love you. I've given you everything. And this is how you repay me. By questioning me like I'm some kind of criminal?" The word stung. She looked down, ashamed. From then on, his control tightened. He discouraged her from seeing friends, claiming they filled her head with nonsense. When her sister called, Daniel intercepted the phone, laughing it off as protection. "You don't need them," he whispered into her hair one night. "You only need me." Emma wanted to believe him, to sink back into the comfort of his arms, but inside her, doubt coiled tighter with every denial. His charm had become a cage, and she didn't know how to escape it. By the time she lay awake that night, staring into the dark, the thought wouldn't leave her. If she couldn't trust him, who could she turn to? Emma had grown quieter, retreating into herself under Daniel's watchful presence. Her world had shrunk to the walls of their home, her lifeline tethered to his moods. Still, doubt gnawed at her, and one afternoon she found herself slipping away for coffee with her old friend, Claire. Claire noticed the change immediately. Emma's eyes darted. Her laughter sounded rehearsed and her hands shook slightly as she stirred her cup. "You're not okay," Claire said softly. "What's going on?" Emma hesitated, guilt pressing against her ribs. Daniel's words echoed in her head. "You don't need them. You only need me." But the weight of silence finally broke her resolve. "He's different. Secretive. I keep catching him in lies, and when I ask, he makes me feel like I'm the crazy one." Claire's face hardened with concern. She reached into her bag and slid a folded piece of paper across the table. "I wasn't sure if I should show you this, but I think you need to see it." Emma unfolded the paper to reveal an old newspaper clipping. The headline screamed in bold letters, "Riverbank murder unsolved, suspect still at large." Her stomach dropped. The article detailed a woman's mysterious death years ago, not far from the area where Daniel had once lived. As Emma's eyes skimmed the words, her pulse quickened. The description of the suspect, tall, dark hair, charming demeanor, made her chest tighten. "I'm not saying it's him," Claire whispered, leaning in. "But don't you think it's strange? He matches too many details. And the way he isolates you, it's exactly what abusers do before things get worse." Emma folded the clipping with trembling hands. "No, Daniel would never. He's not capable of that," she said, though her voice cracked with doubt. Claire placed a hand over hers. "I'm asking you to be careful. Promise me." Emma nodded weakly, but inside, war raged between loyalty and fear. Part of her wanted to tear the clipping apart, to protect the image of the man she loved. Another part couldn't stop seeing Daniel's shadow hovering over those words. Suspect still at large. That night, as she lay beside him, Emma kept the clipping hidden beneath her pillow. She closed her eyes, but sleep didn't come. Only the terrifying question of what she might discover next. Emma couldn't shake the image of the newspaper clipping. Each time Daniel smiled at her, the words "suspect still at large" pulsed at the back of her mind. By the end of the week, her unease had grown unbearable. She needed answers. One evening, while Daniel showered after work, Emma crept into his study. The drawer that had taunted her for weeks sat gleaming in the dim light, locked tight. Her palms were damp, her breath shallow. She knew the sound of running water gave her only minutes. With trembling fingers, she tried a hairpin. The lock resisted at first, then gave with a soft click that echoed like thunder in the quiet room. Her chest tightened as she pulled the drawer open. Inside lay a neat stack of documents. At first glance, they looked ordinary. Bills, receipts. But as she sifted through, her blood ran cold. Multiple driver's licenses with Daniel's face stared back at her, each under a different name. She dropped them onto the desk, her hands shaking uncontrollably. Beneath them were photographs of women she didn't recognize. Smiling faces, candid shots, some blurred as if taken from a distance. Emma's stomach churned. She flipped through them, each one more unsettling than the last, until she found a bracelet. Tarnished silver engraved with initials C.W. Her heart stopped. Clara Winters. The name from Claire's clipping. Emma staggered back, clutching the bracelet. A sob tore through her throat before she could silence it. The shower shut off. Panic surged. She shoved everything back into the drawer, fumbling to lock it again. The mechanism clicked just as the door creaked open. Daniel stepped inside, hair damp, towel slung around his shoulders. His eyes flicked from her trembling hands to the drawer. For a heartbeat, silence stretched like a blade between them. "What are you doing in here?" His voice was calm, almost too calm. Emma forced a smile, though her face was pale. I was just looking for a pen." Daniel's gaze lingered, sharp and unblinking, before he chuckled softly. "You should have asked. You know you can trust me." He kissed her cheek, the gesture chilling rather than comforting. Emma swallowed hard, retreating from the room, the weight of the bracelet's memory burning in her palm. That night she lay awake, knowing one thing for certain. The man beside her was not who he claimed to be. Emma could no longer bear the weight of silence. The image of the false IDs, the photos, the bracelet, they consumed her every thought. That night, with the storm outside rattling the windows, she lit a single candle in the dining room and waited for Daniel to return. When he walked in, he paused at the sight of her sitting rigidly at the table. The flickering light cast shadows across her pale face. "What's this?" he asked, voice calm, almost amused. Emma's hands trembled as she placed the folded newspaper clipping and the bracelet on the table. "I found them." "Daniel, who are you, really?" For a moment, silence stretched. Then he pulled out a chair and sat opposite her, his expression unreadable. The candlelight reflected in his eyes, cold and steady. "You went through my things," he said softly. "That's a betrayal, Emma." Her throat tightened. "Don't twist this. Those IDs, those women, Clara Winters, what did you do to her?" Daniel leaned forward, elbows resting on the table. A faint smile touched his lips. "Maybe I knew her. Maybe I didn't. Maybe people get themselves into situations they can't escape." Emma's breath hitched. Are you saying you killed her? He let the question hang in the air, then shook his head slowly. I'm saying you don't understand the kind of world I've had to survive in. Everything I've done to protect us. Tears blurred her vision. Protect us? From what? From everyone who would tear us apart if they knew the truth. His voice hardened. And now you sit here judging me after all I've given you. Do you even realize how much that hurts? The guilt struck deep, tangled with fear. He reached across the table, covering her trembling hand with his steady one. You love me, Emma. Don't let curiosity destroy what we have. Promise me you won't go digging again. She nodded weakly. Trapped between terror and the desperate need to believe him, but as the candle guttered low, she knew his calmness was more dangerous than any outburst. The morning after her candle-lit confrontation, Emma moved like a ghost through the house. Daniel kissed her forehead before leaving for work, his words syrupy sweet, yet his eyes carried a warning she could not forget. Once the door shut behind him, relief washed over her, fragile and fleeting. That same day, Detective Mark Harlan approached her under the guise of routine questioning. He found her outside a local market, her hands fumbling with grocery bags. Mrs. Carter? His tone was courteous, but his eyes sharp. Mind if I ask you a few questions about your husband? Emma stiffened. Why? We're reviewing an old case. Your husband once lived near the area. Nothing formal, just tying up loose ends. Emma's pulse raced. She forced a smile. Daniel? He wouldn't be involved in anything like that. Harlan noted the hesitation in her voice, the flicker in her eyes. He didn't push yet. If you remember anything unusual, I'd appreciate a call. He slipped a card into her hand. His fingers steady, his gaze weighted with meaning. That night, while Daniel worked in his study, Emma sat alone in the living room, card hidden in her pocket. She imagined calling, confessing her fears, but the thought of Daniel finding out froze her blood. As she stared into the dark, Daniel's past unfolded in fragments, seen through the detective's investigation. Flashbacks painted a chilling picture. A woman laughing with Daniel at a bar, then later seen no more. Another smiling in a photograph, her jewelry vanishing into his drawer. Each life swallowed in silence, each crime erased beneath his charm. Daniel knew how to disappear in plain sight. Change a name, alter a story, slip into roles so convincingly that no one dared doubt him. Back in the present, Emma jumped when Daniel appeared in the doorway. You're quiet tonight, he said, voice deceptively gentle. She forced a small laugh. Just tired. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Rest then. Tomorrow will be better. As he kissed her cheek, Emma's stomach clenched. She realized Harlan was right. Daniel was being watched, and the walls around them were closing in. But for Emma, the cage was already locked from the inside. Emma's heart was already fractured, but nothing could have prepared her for the final break. One night after Daniel fell asleep beside her, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. She hesitated, then reached for it, her hand trembling. The screen lit with a message. Miss you already. Can't wait to see you again. Her breath caught. Scrolling further, she found a trail of messages. Women calling him darling, begging for another night, sending photos that made her stomach twist. With each message, the illusion of her marriage crumbled further. Tears blurred her vision as she read a name she recognized, one of the women from the photographs in his locked drawer. Another name appeared, one Detective Harlan had mentioned in connection to a missing person. Emma dropped the phone, chest heaving. Betrayal no longer lived only in her imagination. It was written in flashing pixels, undeniable and cruel. She slipped from bed and stood in the doorway, staring at Daniel's sleeping form. His face, so calm, so deceptively innocent, now looked monstrous. The man she had loved, trusted and defended, had given himself to others while holding her captive in doubt. Her mind screamed for action. She could run, she could call the detective, she could scream the truth until the walls shook. But fear kept her frozen, her body trembling as if chained to the floor. The phone still glowed faintly on the nightstand, each unread message a dagger. She wiped her tears and whispered to herself, He lied to me. He lied to everyone. For the first time, her love for Daniel felt poisoned beyond repair. The betrayal was complete, not only of her trust, but of her very sense of reality. When Daniel stirred and reached for her in his sleep, she stepped back into the shadows, her heart turning cold. By dawn, Emma knew one truth. She could no longer remain silent. But silence had become her prison, and breaking free would demand more courage than she had ever imagined. Emma's world had already begun to collapse, but the final fracture came one cold evening. Daniel had left his briefcase on the kitchen counter, carelessly unlatched. As she passed by, papers spilled across the surface. She bent to gather them, but froze when her eyes caught on a photograph. It was of a woman, smiling, alive, vibrant. On the back, Daniel's handwriting, "Gone too soon." Emma's fingers trembled as she sifted through more papers. There were receipts under false names, maps with routes marked in red, and another photo of Clara Winters. The undeniable evidence she had feared was now laid bare before her. Her knees nearly gave out, but adrenaline carried her to the bedroom. With shaking hands, she pulled Detective Harlan's card from her nightstand and dialed. Each ring pounded like a drum in her chest until his voice finally answered. "This is Harlan," Emma's voice cracked. "It's me, Emma Carter. I think my husband, he's not who he says he is. I found things. You need to come, stay calm. Don't confront him," Harlan instructed. "I'll move quickly. But you must keep yourself safe." Emma hung up, her heart hammering, terrified that Daniel might hear. That night, she tried to act normal, but Daniel's eyes lingered on her too long, as if reading the fear etched across her face. Over dinner, he spoke casually, but every word dripped with suspicion. "You've been quiet lately," he said, slicing into his steak. "Not losing faith in us, are you?" She forced a smile, her throat dry. "Just tired." He leaned back, studying her. "You'd tell me if you were hiding something, wouldn't you?" Emma's fork clattered against her plate. His tone was smooth, but beneath it lay a predator's edge. Later, as she cleared the dishes, he appeared behind her, his breath hot against her ear. "I know when you're lying, Emma." Her blood turned to ice. She managed a weak laugh, but her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped a glass. That night in the darkened bedroom, she felt his arm tighten around her waist. No warmth remained, only possession, only suspicion. Emma stared into the shadows, knowing the storm was no longer coming. It had arrived. The house had grown eerily quiet, every creak magnified in Emma's ears. She hadn't slept. She lay awake beside Daniel, his body tense even in slumber, his breath shallow. At dawn, she slipped from the bed, her chest tightening with the weight of what she had done, calling the detective, betraying her husband. She barely made it to the kitchen when she heard footsteps behind her. Daniel stood in the doorway, hair disheveled, eyes blazing with suspicion. "You were on the phone last night," he said flatly. Emma froze. "I wasn't. Don't lie to me." His voice cracked through the silence, raw and violent. He stepped forward, each stride deliberate, cornering her against the counter. "Who were you talking to?" "The detective?" Her lips trembled. "Daniel, please. I needed help." "Scared of you." His jaw tightened, his eyes darkening. "After everything I've done for you, you betray me?" In one swift motion, he grabbed her wrist, twisting hard enough to make her cry out. She struggled, fear flooding every nerve. His strength was overwhelming, but desperation sharpened her resolve. She groped behind her for anything. Her hand landed on the cold handle of a kitchen knife. "Let go!" she screamed, thrusting the blade forward. For a heartbeat, silence reigned. His eyes widened in shock as the knife slid between them, his grip loosening. Blood spread across his shirt, blooming crimson. He staggered back, collapsing against the table. Emma dropped the knife, her body trembling violently. "Oh God, Daniel." She sank to her knees beside him, sobbing as she pressed her hands against the wound. "I didn't want this. I loved you." His eyes fluttered open, the charm gone, only raw humanity left. "You should have trusted me," he whispered, a strange mix of regret and menace. Then his chest stilled. The front door burst open. Detective Harlan rushed inside, gun drawn, his face hardening as he took in the scene. The bloodied knife. Emma's tear-streaked face. Daniel's lifeless body. Emma looked up at him, shaking, her hands drenched in red. "He was going to kill me. I didn't have a choice." Harlan lowered his weapon slowly, his expression softening. "It's over now," but Emma's sobs told another truth. It wasn't over, not for her. Love, betrayal, and survival had fused into a wound no justice could ever mend. The house reeked of blood and silence. Emma sat on the living room floor, wrapped in a blanket an officer had draped over her shoulders. Her eyes were swollen, her hands still trembling, though they had been scrubbed clean. Nothing could wash away the memory of Daniel's blood seeping across her palms. Detective Harlan stood near the doorway, giving quiet orders to the uniformed officers. His gaze kept returning to Emma, not with judgment, but with the heavy understanding of a man who had seen too many lives destroyed by the secrets people kept. When the paramedics finally wheeled Daniel's body out, Emma turned her face away, her stomach knotting. This was the man she had once believed was her safe place, her forever. Now he was nothing more than a headline waiting to be written. "Mrs. Carter," Harlan said gently, crouching down so his eyes met hers. "You're safe now?" Emma shook her head, her voice breaking. "Safe? I'll never be safe again. Not from him, not from myself." Harlan didn't argue. He knew she was right. Survival left scars deeper than any knife wound. In the weeks that followed, Emma's life became a blur of statements, court proceedings, and whispered speculation from neighbors. People called her brave, but Emma didn't feel brave. She felt hollow. Each night she woke to the echo of Daniel's last words. "You should have trusted me." She walked through the house alone, every corner haunted. The dining table where he'd charmed her. The study where his secrets had lurked. The bedroom where betrayal had lain beside her. Each room was a graveyard of memories. Harlan's words echoed in her mind from their final conversation. Even the closest bond can hide the darkest crimes. Love blinds us. Trust makes us vulnerable. And sometimes, survival demands a price we never wanted to pay. Standing at the window one evening, Emma watched the rain trail down the glass. Freedom had come, yes, but at the cost of everything she had once believed in. Love had betrayed her. Trust had destroyed her. And the woman staring back at her reflection was someone she no longer recognized. Her marriage was over. Her innocence was gone, and the shadow of Daniel Carter would follow her forever.